We're diving deep here, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be looking at exactly what makes a rookie wide receiver turn into a league winner. We're going to be looking at exactly how we identify the bust at the wide receiver position in this year's rookie draft. We are showing you our process and proving it as we go through. But before we get into it, you better drop a like on this bad boy. You better subscribe to the channel. And down there in the comment section, drop a question that you want me to ask one of these players at the NFL draft. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, we'll be live streaming it on the main fantasy football channel. And yes, the only reason we are there is because of you and all your support. So thank you so damn much for everything over the past few years. And of course, you can find all my Dynasty rookie rankings. You can find all of our in-depth analysis on flockfantasy.com. When you sign up to flockfantasy.com with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get 30% off any subscription. And with promo code FLOCK, with the link in the comment section, yours truly will go through and make a podcast breaking down your Dynasty team. But I think that should be about it. Let's go through and let's look into the historical research that we've done for these rookie wide receivers. First thing that I want to start it off with will be the draft capital at the position, right? I mean, we did the same exact thing at running back where we went through and we essentially looked at where these guys were drafted in the NFL draft in two different populations of this sample. We are going to be looking at one, the players that were drafted in Dynasty rookie drafts. Yes, every single wide receiver. This is regardless of if they hit. This is regardless of if they busted. And here you are going to see that, yeah, I mean, people will draft a wide receiver no matter where they were drafted in the NFL draft. Even if that guy went undrafted, people will go ahead and they will select him. But the second group of guys that we are going to be looking at will only be wide receivers that were still top 100 picks in Dynasty startup drafts 2 years after their NFL career started. So if we're looking at this, these are all the receivers and then only the successful wide receivers. This data we did grab from DLF, and here you'll see that the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of these guys were selected inside the top 100 picks of the NFL draft. It's clear as day if we're going to be looking at those two scatter plots. And then also the majority of them were actually selected before the top 50 picks of the NFL draft. So here, I think it does a good job illustrating the importance of draft capital. Keep in mind, you want to be looking at the y-axis. You want to be looking at those actual labels. Now, our next thing that we're going to be looking at will be the age a wide receiver enters the NFL draft. Now, we are going to break these down into two different sections. We are going to be looking at wide receivers that declared early. These are guys that declared after 3 seasons in college or 2 seasons and a redshirt year. Or we are going to be looking at wide receivers that stayed 4 or more years in college. And if you're looking at the two different groups, it's about 50-50 when these guys come into the NFL. Since 2014, about half of them stayed all 4 years in college and about half of them declared early for the NFL draft. However, if we are only looking at these successful players, you actually had about 60% who declared early versus 40% who stayed 4 or more seasons. So here, I want to highlight the fact that if you declare early, you are more likely to be successful at the NFL level. And of course, if you stay all 4 years, or if you stay even longer than that, you can still find success. We've seen examples of this recently with Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. They both stayed 4 years, but we have to put a massive asterisk on this in that they were in a wide receiver room that also included Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, John Mechie, all in the same room, okay? So it's a very unique situation. We also have seen this with Chris Olave, where Chris Olave was at Ohio State, where he was playing alongside Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Marvin Harrison Jr. So a very unique situation there with Chris Olave. We saw it back in 2019 with Terry McLaurin, but he was at Ohio State with guys like Paris Campbell. The list goes on, but usually when that player stays 4 or more years, they better have a good excuse. If they are going to be that outlier, they better be the Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith type, where they were just stuck on a star-studded roster. Now, our next thing that we will be looking at will be the breakout season for these wide receivers. So we have all the wide receivers that were drafted in Dynasty rookie drafts since 2014 and the successful guys. So if we are going to be looking at year one, you actually had about 24% of the wide receivers drafted in Dynasty rookie drafts broke out year one in college. Successful wide receivers was actually at 28%. So you will see that if you're going to be that wide receiver that finds success, you're more likely to break out early on. Where if we are going to go to year 3 and year 4, the vast majority of wide receivers that will find success at the NFL level will have already broken out by year 3. There have only been 8 wide receivers since 2014 that hit this criteria to find success that broke out as a junior or as a senior. So if we are looking for someone to have success, we want that freshman or sophomore year breakout. That is what we are going to be looking for, ladies and gentlemen. And in terms of the production that we want, you're going to see the bar charts here where you will find that the vast majority of wide receivers that find success in the NFL are going to be anywhere from about 28% of their team's receiving yards on a per game basis to about 42%. Now, of course, we're not going to fault you if you're going out there and you're dominating. If you're Cooper Kupp in college, I mean, if you're DJ Moore in college and have almost 50% of your team's receiving yards on a per game basis, that's phenomenal. The primary thing is, though, if you are seeing less than 28% of your team's college offense, I'm sorry, you're most likely not going to be an impact player. Now, of course, we talked about this at running back as well. With all these different boxes, you can find an outlier that makes sense, right? But usually with that outlier, say Chris Olave, for example, yeah, he stays all 4 years in college, but he gets the draft capital you look for. He dominates when he has a chance. And at the same time, if we are looking at the other 2 boxes, he checks those as well. What we're also going to be looking at will be athleticism. This will be in the form of the 40-yard dash time. Now, what's really funny at wide receiver is if we were to go through and post a scatter plot of this, it would be completely random, right? There's not a strong correlation to actually 40-yard dash time and fantasy football success. It's almost the exact opposite. We just don't want you to be too slow. As long as you're faster than like a 4.62, as long as you're faster than like David Bell last year, you're going to be good. And in our model, we actually negatively impact you if you are too fast. And I know this sounds crazy. You're like, Mason, you are knocking players for being too fast? How the hell? Yes. Because if you are looking at a wide receiver that runs like a 4.31 or a 4.22, what's going to happen is their NFL draft capital will skyrocket because they will turn into field stretching wide receivers that help their NFL offenses more than their fantasy football offenses. So recent examples of this, of wide receivers who run a 4.31 or faster that actually got hurt in our model because they ran too fast and we had to counterbalance the draft capital that they had, were players like John Ross, Henry Ruggs, KJ Hamler, Philip Dorsett, Curtis Samuel. Those players were actually knocked in our model. Now, the last box that we have to check, and in my mind, this is what almost perfects our model and I think makes it almost better than anything else, is we account for the amount of wide receivers that were in your college offense that were drafted to the NFL. Because if we're going to be looking at your market share numbers, right? If you account for 33% of your team's receiving yards on a per game basis, that is so much more impressive if you're Garrett Wilson and you have Jackson Smith-Njigba, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr. all in the same roster. That's why if you were looking at our model last year, we actually had Garrett Wilson ranked higher than Treylon Burks going into the NFL draft, despite Burks having a more impressive market share number. So we are going to juice the numbers, the market share numbers in particular, based on how many wide receivers in your offense in college were drafted to the NFL. Because if you account for 33%, and you have that top end talent around you, it's way more impressive than if you accounted for 35%, but there's nobody playing next to you. So I want to prove the model real quick. And how we're going to go through and do this is we are going to sort wide receivers by their Dynasty startup ADP, their rookie season before the year started. And we are going to sort them that way. So the Dynasty community ranked these players in the order that they are on the left, and you'll see our prospect scores on the right. We grouped these in batches of 12 guys, and then we highlighted the guys who scored the highest in green. So those would have been players we are aggressively targeting in Dynasty rookie drafts, and we labeled the bust in red. So those would have been players that we were saying to avoid because they had red flags in comparison to the cost that they were associated with. So our first group here, you're going to see, okay, we highlight Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, and Jamar Chase as guys to go through and draft. Yeah, I probably stand by that. And the clear bust in this group that our model identified, Corey Davis, Kevin White, and Devontae Parker. Okay, so that looks good. Going down to our next group, our targets, we're going to be Justin Jefferson, who actually scored the highest in this group by a wide margin, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, and then our busts were Dorial Green-Beckham, Sterling Shepard, and Brashad Perriman. I'll stand by that. Yes, we missed CeeDee Lamb on this. CeeDee Lamb scores a 33. Jared Jeudy scores a 34. So we were neutral on them in comparison, but we're not saying to avoid or target. Now, our next drop is going to be Jalen Reagor, Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown scoring the highest in our model here. And then the guys who score the lowest are going to be John Ross, Paris Campbell, and sadly, DK Metcalf. This is the one knock you can have on this model is it would have missed on DK Metcalf back in 2019. Yes, he played at Ole Miss with Elijah Moore. Yes, with AJ Brown, but still, he didn't really produce much in college. Obviously, it does not look good to have him highlighted in red, though. Now, dropping down to our next tier, the guys that were labeled as bust were Henry Ruggs, Leonte Carew, Philip Dorsett, Kelvin Benjamin. Yeah, you should have been avoiding those guys. The guys that were labeled as hits, the highest scoring player in this group is T. Higgins, Elijah Moore, Tyler Boyd, Allen Robinson, and Marquise Lee. So stand by that strongly. Next one, we have Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deebo Samuel as the targets in this range. The bust, we have Gallup, Cody Lattimore, and Brandon Ayuk. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I would rather Brandon Ayuk not be labeled a bust, but as you can clearly tell by everything we've done, way more predictive than the Dynasty ADP. And then dropping down to our next one, we have Godwin, Curtis Samuel, Brian Edwards as our targets, and our bust are Hakeem Butler, Dante Pettis, Malcolm Mitchell. Group after that, our targets are Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Traquan Smith, Carlos Henderson. Our bust are Braxton Miller, Chris Conley, Amari Rodgers. Group after that, we have KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool, DJ Chark. Group after that, we have Miles Boykin, Stephon Diggs, and Jarvis Landry. So we were able to hit on those guys, which I am very proud of. So overall, I hope that this shows you this model works, okay? This way of scoring wide receivers is way more predictive than what you've historically had with Dynasty ADP. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at how the rookies in this class score and compare them to guys previous. Starting off number one, and I know this seems so aggressive, right? It seems like we are just scoring him this high because it's this year and I want to make it look clickbaity and I want to get people commenting. No, this is just how it is. Jackson Smith-Njigba scores a 42. And I know this seems crazy, right? Because this puts him tied for the number one score of all time with Sammy Watkins and Calvin Ridley for us. It's directly ahead of Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, and Justin Jefferson. Obviously, all of these players are the elite of the elite, right? Like, this is foolproof. This guy can't bust. This guy is going to be an elite level wide receiver. But if we go through and look at what's going into this score for Jackson Smith-Njigba, right now we're projecting him to be drafted as a mid-round one pick. His dominator was about 32%. He accounted for 32% of the receiving yards on a per game basis at Ohio State his sophomore year. He breaks out as a sophomore. He is athletic enough with his 40-yard dash time. He falls in the range we're looking for. He declares early for the NFL draft. He is not too small. And what was most impressive and what is juicing his score this much is this season at Ohio State, you had 4 wide receivers on this roster. Like, let's go ahead and let's pull up the wide receivers that we actually have. I can just pull up my Twitter real quick because we tweeted this out. And this is what is juicing his numbers. And this is what is making him such a good prospect. You had 4 wide receivers that are going to get selected to the NFL. You had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Emeka Egbuka all on the same team. The man is special. I'm not trying to do this to be hot takey. This is where he scores. And this is why we've been talking about him since last year. That's like the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase. Now, dropping down to our next guy, we're going to have Quentin Johnston as our second highest score, which is how I have it ranked. I understand everybody loves Zay Flowers now, but we're going to go Johnston. He scores a 34. Now, in this range, you can definitely find a lot of players that find success, but you can find a lot of bust as well. Like the guys who score 35 to 33 include Mike Evans, Brandon Cooks, DJ Moore, Odell Beckham Jr., CeeDee Lamb, Juju Smith-Schuster as the hits. And then the bust, on the other hand, you have Jalen Reagor. You have Rashad Bateman, maybe you want to throw him in that bucket, Corey Coleman, and Bryan Edwards. So if you're scoring like in the 33 range, you still have an incredibly high ceiling, but the floor is not guaranteed as it would be with the Jackson Smith-Njigba, just to give you a sense of the range of outcomes. Now, looking at Jordan Addison, he has some strong marks as well as Quentin Johnston. He does get knocked just a little bit due to his size. He scores a 32, and if we're looking at scores that range from 33 to 31, I mean, you have some of those names that we were just talking about that do provide those elite level ceilings, such as CeeDee Lamb, Juju Smith-Schuster. At 32, you even have, I mean, Michael Thomas sneaking in, Allen Robinson sneaking in, Deebo Samuel, Chris Godwin. So you have some very strong players on that front, but you also have the bust. I mean, you have Laviska Shenault, Josh Dotson, I mean, Marquise Lee, Bryan Edwards. So it's not a guarantee that you are hitting with Addison. Now, this is where you see the last player in this tier in my mind. So you have Zay Flowers at 29. Now, with Zay Flowers, I'm not saying he's the same player as this, but you can see that this is where he scores. You have him in the same range as Mike Williams, Nelson Aguilar, DK Metcalf, Rondale Moore, Devin Funchess, Deontay Johnson, DJ Chark. The reason Zay Flowers is not scoring as high as these other guys is if we're looking at Zay Flowers, the man is a second-year breakout compared to a first-year breakout, such as Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. The man stays all 4 years. He does not declare early, which is a massive red flag because keep in mind, his 36% dominator rating is not as impressive when he stays all 4 seasons. And he also has 0 teammates that are going to be drafted to the NFL, unlike the top 3 guys who are all coming from programs who will have players drafted to the NFL. So that's why Zay Flowers is going to be lower in our model. That's why I have Zay Flowers ranked at wide receiver 4 and not having him as a top 3 guy. I think we've proven our model enough in the middle half of this video to not have to explain ourselves anymore. Now, with our next 2 guys, you're not going to be surprised to see we have Josh Downs at 27. You can see all the other players that were in this range. You have some hits here. You have guys like Stephon Diggs at 26. You have Michael Pittman at 26. But you also have a ton of bust on this list, right? I mean, the majority of this range is going to be littered with the bust, and you're probably going to be having a hit rate less than 50% once we get down here. But what's also very surprising is Marvin Mims. Now, this is how we use this model, right? Because Marvin Mims scores 27. The reason for this is he breaks out as a freshman. He declares as a junior. He's big enough. He's fast enough. He's productive enough early on in his collegiate career. He's going to get the draft capital. So with Marvin Mims, if he is standing out here and you think, oh, that's real weird, right? He's going to go round 3 of rookie drafts. How is he this high? That just tells us that if he's going in round 3 of rookie drafts, we're going to go through, we're going to target him there. It doesn't tell us, you know what, you all of a sudden have to start drafting Marvin Mims at the top of the 2nd round. No, you don't have to do that. But if you have some late 2nd rounders, according to our model, Marvin Mims, of course, is most likely going to be a bust according to this list, but he does have a better hit rate than the Dynasty community is giving him credit for. Now, dropping down again, we actually have 2 other rookies tied at 25. We have Jalen Hyatt and Kayshon Boutte. So with Jalen Hyatt, I would actually probably say we prefer him over Boutte easily, regardless of what the model says. With Boutte, the main concerns that we're going to have will be his burst score that he had from the NFL Combine. I mean, obviously, the man just can't jump. I mean, the man does not seem like he has the athletic prerequisites to actually dominate at the next level, but he does have some very strong marks on his profile. He breaks out as a freshman. He dominates as a sophomore. He declares as a junior. That's kind of what we're looking for. So I would probably manually move him down here just a bit, right? Because he definitely does have those combine concerns, but that's going to be baked into his NFL draft capital. NFL teams know that. NFL talent evaluators know it. So he's going to move down draft boards because of it. And that's baked in to this price. is baked into this score. Now, we also have some long shots. We have like Rashee Rice, Tyler Scott, where if you're looking at players in this range, you have significantly more bust than anything else. Say the same thing with Jaden Reed, who scores a 19. You actually have one hit in that 19 range, which was actually Terry McLaurin. But keep in mind, with Terry McLaurin, we were discussing the fact that he was such a weird prospect, came into the NFL like 23 years old, was never productive at Ohio State just because he was playing alongside some of the best wide receivers in college football. We have Xavier Hutchinson, 18. Now, what I want to point out, and is pretty damn funny, is that of all wide receivers that were drafted in Dynasty rookie drafts since 2014, according to DLF ADP, you know who scores the lowest in our model ever? Jonathan Mingo. This is with the assumption he's a third-round NFL draft pick. If he sneaks into round 2, if he sneaks into round 1, obviously will change. He'll move up. But he has nothing that we look for. He does not break out as a freshman. He breaks out as a junior. He does not dominate as a sophomore. He doesn't even dominate as a senior. He's never the wide receiver 1 on his own team. He's okay as a senior. He does not declare as a junior. He does not have top talent in his offense. So the market share numbers aren't good. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, his quarterback was bad. Okay, well then what was the other wide receiver on the team doing, leading the team in receiving yards? What does that have to do with anything? His market share numbers were bad, not the overall numbers. Hey, just please, if you're taking anything from this video, don't be drafting Jonathan Mingo. That's the one takeaway that you're going to have. But I think that's all we have. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the Flock, supporting the channel. I really hope that this was able to help you out. I really hope you're able to get something from this. And as always, if you want to get more in-depth analysis, if you want to get my Dynasty rookie rankings, you can find those on flockfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code FLOCK. You're going to get 30% off any subscription. You will also get yours truly going through and breaking down your Dynasty team in a podcast. But thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate you and really hope you have a great day.